Today we're chatting with Patrick Woodhead, record-breaking polar explorer, author, and the visionary behind White Desert, the first company to bring luxury travel to Antarctica. Patrick's done it all, from leading groundbreaking expeditions across Greenland to becoming one of the youngest to reach the South Pole. Now he's turning his love for adventure into unforgettable bucket list experiences while keeping things sustainable in one of the most remote, untouched, and unexplored places on Earth, Antarctica. So thank you, Patrick, for being here. If you could reflect back to when you first conceived this idea to where you are now and how that has changed you for the better.
That whole vision started in a little tent in the middle of Antarctica, us daydreaming the days away, trying to kind of survive. And now we've got one of the largest logistics in the whole of Antarctica. Cape Town in South Africa is like a world-class destination. It's amazing beaches, it's amazing restaurants. It's just a beautiful place to launch from. And almost no one knows that you can go to Antarctica from Cape Town. The other bit about that is that we access a bit of Antarctica that almost no one ever goes to. So it's literally like the dark side of Antarctica, where we've got mountain ranges and mountains that aren't even named. It's really unexplored. So I really wanted to fly from a beautiful destination. The clients also, if you go to Punta Arenas, it's like, what are you going to do for 2-3 days? This is Cape Town set up for amazing tourism. So to fly from there and from Africa was really exciting for me. And then in terms of the permissions, ours is an environmental permit. So no one owns Antarctica, so we don't own the land, but it's all about how we affect the environment, so that we have incredibly stringent rules on us about the way we operate. We have to remove all waste. We have severe limits on the way we impact and operate in Antarctica, which I thoroughly agree with. And that works very well with the mentalities of the trips, because we only take 12 people into each camp. So for me, to go and see an emperor penguin, if there's 200 other people with you, all the magic is lost.
It's gone, yeah.
But just when you get that serendipitous moment of discovery, when you go out and you actually see it and you feel like you're the first person to go there, and that's by having small numbers of really small, responsible tourism, for me is the way to go.
Yeah.
The bit I love about it is you go into Africa, it's the humid night sky, and then we get in the jet and we fly south, and on flight radar everybody goes north. We're the only plane going south, and then suddenly you're in this white, pristine, freezing world that's completely different. So it's a real juxtaposition.
But also it gives gives you an opportunity to put something holistic together for clients. But just real quickly, can you walk us through a little bit about the starting point in Cape Town and the orientation that you do for the clients, and just kind of what that setup is like, and just talk a little bit about what it means when you're like, we'll let you know an hour before we need to go to the airport. Because that is one big thing especially for Americans, who are always like, I need to know everything, when I go, what time, where I'm gonna be. But that also is part of the fun.
So there's a whole onboarding process, and that's from your insurance, medical forms, the whole thing. So we take it really seriously. We've got a whole team that does that. But I think that when people come to Cape Town, the first thing to understand is the schedule changes. That's what's going to happen. Antarctica dictates it. We have an ice runway that we prepare. It's super safe, but we might have weather come in which case the flight is delayed. And it's not a scheduled flight. It ain't Delta flying to JFK. This is the real world. This is Antarctica. So I think that moment when they arrive in Cape Town, we do a safety briefing. We have a whole shop now where they can get all their kit and clothing. So there's a lot of people are very sort of concerned about their boots, as they should be. They're going into the wilds. So we take them through that whole process, and then it's really about our forecasting, and the process to launch a plane is complex. And we're flying an A340. So this is a big aircraft that flies into Antarctica. We have 20 scientists on board. We have the 2 different camps that are going. So we're leaving, in a big aircraft. When the door opens from the jet and they suddenly step on Antarctica, I have the easiest job in the world, because people, they might have gone to different lodges in Africa, and there's always a comparison. There's always a comparable. We don't have that. There's nothing like they've ever done in their life is like stepping into Antarctica. So when they come to the camps and they don't have Wi-Fi, they're away from their phones, they have to pay attention to what they're wearing with our guides, and they're like, because of the wind, because of the weather, because of this. And we usually get fantastic weather, but it's like that whole element, which I think is really the magic of our trips, is people totally reconnect with nature. And they disconnect from their phones, they disconnect from the mortgage repayments and the work and the this, and all the flotsam and jetsam that fills up so much of their day. They just zero back to them, their inner voice. I know this sounds super hippie, but it's like, it's really amazing for people to have space and time. And then certainly with like families, you know, they're like absolutely doing amazing adventures with their kids or with their wife or their husband or whatever. And it's great to have people come into this environment and then really feel their true potential.
Yeah, I think like, you know, the excitement of the trip, it just starts right from the airport. You guys give this boarding pass, right? I'm going to Wolfang's runway in Antarctica, right? And you have this little bit of like, you know, you go through passport control and they're like, let me see your boarding pass. And you kind of give it to them. It just feels like, oh my God, I'm doing something that
really not many people do.
When you say really not many people, like, I mean, you're talking like so few people in the history of this planet, right, have had the opportunity and privilege to do this. But I love that.
On the people on the planet, when I skied across Antarctica, this is a full crossing of the Antarctic continent. More people had stood on the moon than had ever crossed Antarctica.
Which is wild.
So like kind of like
in perspective.
Yeah, like, and even now going to the South Pole, when we take about 200 people to the South Pole a year, that's it. Yeah. It's completely finite.
Yeah,
it's wild.
And I think that like also when you get on the plane, right, and having these other, you know, these scientists on board, you know, or you have a film crew or something, it makes you feel like you're also a part of something, right? Right. So you're going on this adventure, you know, to the great unknown, right? Because there's no way to properly prepare for it. Physically, yes, you should, but mentally, like to really understand what's about to hit you. And I think, I mean, listen, I'll speak from my own experience. When you land on that runway, I mean, you're complete awe, but then you deplane. Then you turn around and you look at this Airbus sitting on this icy sheath of a runway. And the first thing, like I said to myself, was like, how is this even happening? Like, how does this like actually logistically happen? Yeah. And I think it humbles you. Like you fall right into your humility right when you get off that plane. But anyway, so okay, we're not even there, right? We just got there, right?
The priority, you're looking at these incredible mountains or you're going through the ice tunnels. It's surreal. It's fascinating. So yeah, your mind is completely absorbed with where you are, and it's that present tense. And then also the activities we do are either, you know, they're scaled to what the person wants to do. So you don't need to be like, you know, some crazy climber to be able to come on our trips. I took my boy when he was 6 years old. In fact, I wanted to go when he was slightly smaller than an emperor penguin, but he grew a little bit too much. And my daughter as well, you know, they've been 3 times. And so, I mean, it is really accessible. And being at Whichaway Camp, being at Echo Camp, you know, it is very, very comfortable being there. Yeah. So we go off on day trips, and then we have the most insanely qualified high mountain guides that are, you know, they've all got world records themselves.
Incredible.
And you know, they're going to teach you how to do some ice climbing, or to do a zip line, or to go fat biking, or to even just do a small hike to take in the views. And you don't need to be this like double marathon running sort of badass explorer. It's something that I love, the idea that we can open it up to. Yes, it's expensive, but aside from the money, it's actually pretty accessible.
Yeah, and I think that was, you know, for me, someone could go there and just be completely in love and enamored with landscape and be a bookworm and have an incredible time there. And then you could take some real serious people, right? It's like, you think you've had adventure and adrenaline before? We can bring it to the next level. And then everyone in between.
Well, on the same trip back in 2009 or something, we had Bear Grylls and a Saudi princess who had never seen snow before on the same trip. So imagine kind of like Bear was trying to like climb and kite and do everything, and the Saudi princess had literally never been outside. So it was like, wow, there's a difference.
There's literally
literally the polar opposites.
And I think like something you said, you know, with bringing your kids, and like, can you share a little bit about like what that experience is like through your kids' eyes? You know,
my kids are different in the sense that they have grown up with me being an explorer. So it sort of, vicariously so many of my experiences. Like I didn't know my son and daughter knew every single penguin there was and could recite them. They just listen and hear. I think that what I've noticed with lots of families that come with us, the mother and kids or father and kids, they're doing the activities together, and there's an enormous bonding of that. And often, again, the children are distracted or with their own friends or moving around, and this is like amazing quality time. So, the very definition of quality time. So for me to bring my own kids, and as I say, like they're mine. So like they go up in the front and, talk to the pilots, and then
they're flying the plane.
Like the piston bullies that groom the runway are literally called Oscar and Electra. So,
Got it. I was the only one to go out that morning. I was like, I really want to go rock climbing. Like but I want like a little bit of thrill, right? I can do outdoors, but I'm not an outdoors guy, right? This experience pushed me definitely beyond my limits from a fear, right? And it was really kind of like moving. It was like 2 hours of complete presence. I have to imagine you have incredible stories about people working through a lot of emotion, right? On trips like this, kind of pushing their boundaries. Or do you find that a lot of people kind of like still stay in their comfort zone to an extent?
I think people very much take the opportunity to revel in that environment, and they've got a guide that's just step by step literally holding their hand, taking them up a mountain ridge that they would never normally do. I just literally came back from Antarctica a few days ago, and one of the ladies was abseiling and she was terrified of heights. And when she got to the bottom and did the abseil, this was extraordinary. We went into an ice cave, into these amazing crystal chandeliers of this insane in this crevasse, which is just the ice formations are beautiful, but the lady was claustrophobic. So, for her to do that, to conquer her fears, but she was so enamored by what she was seeing, she was so in awe of it, she got over her claustrophobia, and then we resurfaced and came out, and she was like, okay, this is the most amazing thing. So we constantly have people pushing their own personal barriers. It's a big safety margin we've got for what we're doing. We know what we're doing, we're roped up and all this sort of stuff. So it's joyous to see people do that. It's the most wonderful thing to see people overcome lots of their either prejudices about Antarctica, where they think it's flat and white and boring. You were at Witcherway. It's colors everywhere. It's the most extraordinary place. Going into the ice tunnels, it's iridescent alien blue.
Insane.
It's insane. And so giving people that pushing them is very much part of what we do.
Yeah, and it's been just over a year since I've been, and I'm still find myself processing moments. And again, like having that time, right, where you're completely switched off. And not only switched off, it's you have nothing in front of you, and yet you have everything at all that you ever would need and want, right? And so, and the ice caves were again, alien blue. And that was something that I think you can do in like November, December, and then they begin to melt, right? And so even to think like when you're going through those ice caves, just to be like, oh my God, these tunnels become flooded, right? And then they're hollowed out again, and it's like.
But then also we've got the Crystal Cave, which is again these beautiful ice formations that are hexagonal. So it's all like geometry. Like when you look at the ice crystals in these huge formations. We have the emperor penguins that, standing with 28,000 penguins and their young chicks. It's just the most, for me, it's like when people see the migration of the wildebeest and they see millions of herds. It's like seeing the emperor penguins and then understanding their backstory of what they've done to survive the winter, to be there, and why they're the only animals that live in Antarctica permanently. That's one of the greatest wildlife events on Earth. And then to fly all the way to the South Pole. So, to get to the South Pole, it's a long flight. It's 2,400 kilometers. Once you get
another
to
like 5 hours.
It's 5, and then we camp at this place called Dixie's, which your nearest neighbor is the International Space Station going above your head. That's how remote it is. It's the most remote camp on Earth. And just for one night, the guests get this experience of what Scott, Amundsen, Shackleton, what they felt being in this environment where it's literally like being in the middle of the ocean, but everything's frozen. It's endless in every single direction. And if you want to talk about humbling, you want to talk about reconnection to the planet and how big and how vast the scale of Antarctica is. It's just like, that is one of the most extraordinary flights. And then you land at the South Pole. It's the lowest point on Earth. You can walk around the world in a couple of paces.
Yeah.
You know, it's still
What's
a really
that
big
like?
deal.
Yeah, like, because what was your your bit with like the compass when you're in the South Pole? Like,
Yeah,
I don't
well,
know,
the
I was
compass is
listening.
trying to point to magnetic south, which is the geomagnetic South
Yeah.
Pole. So that's the magnetic South Pole. And that's a totally different place. That's like about 2,000 kilometers away from the actual
Got
lowest
it.
point on Earth. So your compass is literally like this, so you have to use a declination on a compass. But even the GPS starts to get really, really screwed up
Yeah.
because it's wild. I mean,
My favorite was when I did have because I had my phone on me. It was like you can now make calls from Russia, and because it would pick up each of the bases.
the Russian science station is not
Russia
far away.
or
Yeah.
India, but anyways, that was a little blip. I was like,
Welcome to Russia.
Yeah, I was like, welcome to Russia.
Yeah, I'm quite far away. Yeah.
Welcome to India. And
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this is amazing. I don't have to. Yeah, but so when you talk about people pushing their own boundaries and fears and or like just true adventure, like, is there something in Antarctica that you have not yet done yourself that you're dying to do, or you've done?
No, I've definitely not done everything.
Like, what's one thing in Antarctica that
so
you're like,
just recently I flew into the mountains that are only 25 kilometers south of our runway. So they're just there. We can see them, like, easy. It's almost, I'm guessing 20 people in the history of man have ever been into these mountains before. They are just absolutely wild. It is like having Yosemite National Park sitting right at the end of the runway.
wow.
And I went in there and we were exploring for about 4 or 5 days. And we're talking about sheer walls of rock that are 4,000 feet high, like sheer walls. You go there and it's like seeing El Cap, but there's no one there. And it's just, so going into these kinds of new environments, it's just awe-inspiring. And that's the joy for me. And so to take clients, we've got a little landing strip now that we can take people in there, and we're talking about tiny amounts of people. We ski tour around and you're standing at the base of these. Yeah, it's like being Yosemite, but you're the only people there.
When I'm talking to clients or colleagues about White Desert, is it's like, yes, okay, you can see the penguins and you could do the fat tire biking and you could do the rappelling and but there's also so much opportunity for new exploration and adventure.
And genuine.
Like, even with the mountain guides that have been, there for 10, 15, 20 years,
I literally had notes from 2 of the mountain guides going, that was one of the best days I've ever had in my whole life.
Yeah.
And these are guys that live in mountains. You'd sort of be like, oh my God, another mountain.
Yeah, and I think,
and it was just amazing.
Yeah, and I think that, like, a lot of people, because the types of clients that, go on, these trips that can have the fortunate circumstances to be able to afford to go on a trip like this, it's like letting them know, like, hey, like, you've seen nothing yet, right? And I think, kind of drilling that home is that this experience is so custom and individualized. It's such a personal experience.
But also that's something that we spoke a little bit earlier about people prior to them going, about getting them ready.
Yeah.
We want to find out whether, if you're a wildlife photographer and you're massively into it, then we'll spend more time with the penguins and do a whole thing with how to use your cameras and everything like that. If you are wanting to be more, we have guys that want to run marathons. We have guys that into also, even people that just want to take one of the 6x6s, drive up to a beautiful view and have a glass of champagne and enjoy a holiday.
Yeah.
Like, it's a holiday. You don't have to always push the boundaries. So just people just relaxing and taking it easy and taking in these views. That's another part of it.
Yeah. And that leads me to, like, so the difference between, like, Which Way and Echo Camp, obviously there's an aesthetic, difference between the two. When you talk about activities that you can activate right from camp, can you just talk about the difference, what you can activate from Echo that's unique and what you can activate from Which Way?
Do you know why it's called Which Way?
I do, only because, okay, hold on, cut that. No, I don't. Can you please? Yeah, but I actually really fucking love why it's called Which Way, because I can imagine you be like,
yeah, it's cool. It's called Which Way because I got lost and didn't know which way to go. So I was like, okay, let's call it Which Way. And Which Way is kind of is our flagship it feels well established. It's been there for 15 years. And
It's so that's where I stayed.
it's so comfortable. And we've just put now in this like clear dome where you can do yoga and stretching in the morning. There's a sauna and a ice bath.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not really need an ice bath, but it's really established and comfortable. And from there, you're on rocks. People have this image of Antarctica just, as I say, snow and white, but this is on rocks, so it's much warmer because the rocks, radiate. And we've got this beautiful lake in front of us. We have these huge ice falls, the crystal caves, the blue river. So there's loads of like amazing elements just on Witchaway's doorstep. Echo was built because I was with Buzz Aldrin, the astronaut, and he goes,
Casually.
and he goes, this place is like the surface of the moon. And I used to love Star Wars as a kid, so I was like, okay, let's go completely futuristic. Let's build something totally different. And we built it with these huge windows, with the idea that you're always connected to the landscape outside. So you get the solar radiation, the heat from the windows, but you've always got this connection to the wilderness. Even if you're lying in your bed, you've got these vast floor-to-ceiling windows. And at Echo, we're much more sort of mountainous. So we do these climbs up these ridges that are, it's hard to describe. They're really they're quite gnarly and quite sort of, people find them, difficult, but at the same time, they're beautiful because you have the ice caps smashing over these mountain ridges and it creates these crazy ice formations. So we go into the crevasse there as well. We go under the ice, we see these formations. So it's a bit more, Echo's a little bit more, I would say, attuned to the adventurous,
yeah.
but only a little bit more.
Yeah.
It's still the big highlights of the trips are going to the South Pole, which everyone does, and also going to the Emperor Penguins, which everyone does.
Yeah. And what's so funny is these landscapes, like even like when you're landing at Wolfang and you see, you're like, oh, that looks so cute. And then like you get up close to these and you're like, oh my God.
No, it's huge. And the landscape just grows and grows.
Yeah.
And people always say to me, which one is your favorite camp? And honestly, they're really different. I always say it's like choosing between my children. It's like you can't, they're different and they're totally different environments.
Yeah. Now, speaking of like being at the camp and like on, just the experience that, I mean, the food, right? Like I was just blown away by how thoughtful and delicious the food was. And my favorite was like the Indian night that we had. Like
the Indian base is just down the road, so it's got to be good. Otherwise, the Indians would come and complain. They'd be like, guys, you've got to sort this out.
I honestly thought, I was like, they definitely went down the road, picked up some.
No way, ours is way better. Don't worry.
Yeah, but can you just touch on like how you can I can't even fathom the logistics around a kitchen like that and delivering exceptional food in timely way and beautiful way. And can you just give us some of the thought about, that went into having that's so much part of the experience.
Yeah, everyone comes thinking they're going to eat really basic food or basic wine, and it's not the case at all. We have a team. Cape Town's renowned for its food. It's a very foodie place. And we have a team of chefs that they literally cook 22,000 meals from about March the whole way through the off season. So they literally create all these meals. We take all the packaging off. We subdivide it into, and then the guys in Antarctica sort of paint by numbers and put it all back together again. But the food is something that it's beyond amazing. And everyone comes thinking they're going to lose weight, and it's like, sorry, that ain't happening.
Yeah, I have to say, like, there's so many logistical components to this trip that, I mean, my head is kind of like just been. It's like, how long did it take White Desert to get to where it is now, like to a point where you're like, all right, this is like how many years did?
So we've been going 20 years, just about, and now I feel that we really know our logistics. Everything from a can of Coke goes from $1 or whatever it is in the real world is $38.6 by the time it gets to Witchaway. A liter of fuel at our most expensive place on the way to the South Pole, it's $50 for a single liter of fuel. Yeah. So it's like that's more expensive than champagne. So it's the logistics are really difficult and complex. But after 20 years of doing it, I feel that we're pretty good. But then as soon as I get overconfident, Antarctica then throws in a blizzard and messes up our plan.
Messes it up.
Yeah.
What's the longest like a client has ever, because a blizzard can come through, right? So it's like, what's the longest a client has ever Because if it's a 4-day or 5-day turnaround, what's the longest you've had a client down there because of inclement weather?
Over all that time in 20 years,
Yeah.
we've had the longest has been 3 days. Normally, I think that our flight schedule is pretty normal to move by about 24 hours.
Okay, so
like 24 hours is about normal. So I think that, of all the flights we do, of which we do about 20 into Antarctica each year, most people, that's why we ask for 2 days prior and 2 days
2
afterwards.
days after, yeah.
Which is also, most people, again, coming from the US, it's nice to get onto a decent time zone, actually enjoy Cape Town. And then when you come out of the trip, it is intense. Go to Cape Town into Franschhoek, there's beautiful restaurants and spas, and people can actually relax before they go home.
Well, Patrick, thank you so much, man.
Thanks, man.
I really appreciate you.
Yeah, what a
being
pleasure.
here.